So happy birthday, Ferdinand Cheval, born on April 19th, 1836. He lived a long life. He lived to 1924, and he was, for a good part of his life, a mail person, a postman in France. This was the man. He looks like, a stubborn man. He was very poor, and he only had, I think, he only studied in a school for 4 years, the primary school, not even high school. But this didn't stop him from dreaming and for acting upon his dreams, something we don't do actually. You know, the educated ones forget most of the time their dreams. This man, a poor man, a so-called simple man, there is no such thing actually. I don't think any man is simple. We are all complex and at least in part troubled. So, you know, we are not simple, and he was not simple. Well, this is a, rather, comical portrait of him. But anyway, it shows that the postman arrived at being immortalized even in this way. So Ferdinand Cheval, with his second wife, I think, because he was married and then his wife died, then he remarried, and I think this picture is of him with his second wife, Philomene, and their daughter, Alice, who unfortunately died at 15. So this man you are looking at, who studied for 4 years, that's it. He only studied 4 years in school, as opposed to us who studied at least for 18 years. So this man studied for 4 years, and we studied for at least 18. But he made it into the public consciousness because of his stubborn quest for expressing himself in ways which could make us wonder, what did we learn in all those 18 years? This is the village where he lived, I'm not sure if this is where he lived or where he built his palace. Probably both. He bought a piece of land, and he built on that plot of land his ideal palace. You will see the palace. The palace is totally different from what we see here. He was influenced also by this castle, le Château de Charmes-sur-l'Herbasse, une des sources d'inspiration pour le Facteur Cheval. So he was influenced by this castle, although this castle is very different also, is much more stern and in a way simplistic compared to what he built. It is possible he was also influenced by, maybe he saw some pictures of Hindu temples, because in the flesh of his castle, of his palace, there is a picture, there is an effigy in a way. He sculpted, he built. I don't know. In his case, you can use both words, to sculpt and to build a little picture of a Hindu temple. So it's possible he was inspired by some images he saw of Hindu temples. So Ferdinand Cheval was a French postman who spent 33 years of his life building le Palais idéal, the ideal palace, in Hauterives. Indeed, it was that place that I showed a picture of. The palace is regarded as an extraordinary example of naive art architecture. Naive art architecture. We don't talk about art architecture, naive or otherwise. But in his case, art and architecture come together. And yes, it is in a certain way naive, but this so-called naivete doesn't eliminate traces of cultural history. And as I said, there were some influences, but he was able to filter them through his own psychology, through his own interior dispositions. Here is written in French. French is written in French, but I will translate. This is what he said in 1905. The son of fils de paysan, he was the son of villagers. I want to live and die in order to prove that in my category there are also people of genius and energy. 29 years I was a rural mailman. The work was my glory and the honor of my soul, of my of the peace of mind, or the happiness of my soul. In the present, this is my strange history, where the song it became 40 years later a reality. Meaning, you know, he tried to express himself. He understood his condition. He understood that he was, you know, a poor peasant who, without education, this didn't stop him from longing, for dreaming, for wanting to express himself and believing in his, what he called his genius. And it is very possible that there is so-called genius in everybody. But as Einstein said, if you make a fish climb a tree, that fish would think all his life that he is stupid, that he's an idiot, because the fish is not made to climb a tree. The fish is made to swim, to be in the water. Unfortunately, the schools of architecture, and not just of architecture, the schools in general, try to make the fish climb the tree. Not everybody is meant to climb a tree. And Ferdinand Cheval found his way through, obviously, sacrifices, hard work, but I would say also through the pleasure of discovering. So he was considered by neuropsychologists, you know, so-called, you know, psychiatrists, doctors, and so on, because his case is so unique. Although there are others, there is a man also who built in a similar way in Los Angeles, or near Los Angeles, North America. But this is what it was written about him. Malgré certains avis divergents, this man, Olivier Dulac, a neuropsychiatrist at the hospital Necker, suggests that the postman Cheval presented the profile type of an autiste d'Asperger, and that his comportment, his you know, way of being, seemed to attest certain aspects of the specter, of the autistic specter. Monomaniac, and obsessed by the idea, the fixed idea of building a wonderful and immense palace in his garden, which he was actually able to do, presented clearly a psychological, particular psychological structure, I guess, in this sense. This is what they made a film about him, and this Niels Tavernier, he was the one who produced this film about this, you know, strange man, Ferdinand Cheval. So the starting point for the ideal palace that he built was a stone that he found when he was delivering mail between several villages. And this is the stone. It's not very clear to me. It seems to, I don't know, are there 3 stones, or it's a bigger stone with 3, you know, kind of distinct parts, but whatever it is, this was the starting point. You know, a man finds a stone, and from that stone, he develops a dream to build a so-called ideal palace, and then he spends 33 years to build it alone, and he does it. And now tourists flock there to see the wonder. He also built a mausoleum, his own grave, for 8 years. So essentially, he was an architect, if we can say so, for 41 years. For 33 years, he built le Palais idéal, the ideal palace, and for 8 years, he built his own, mausoleum, which is this one. Now you would say, why did he spend 8 years to build this? But other people spend much more time with the same desire to kind of last. My question is if he built this just for himself or for him and his wife, because I read that this was for him, but I don't know. I hope it was also for his wife. Anyway. But even this is an interesting thing. I mean, compare it with what you see on the left. And you say, yes, why do we need something like this? I don't think it's an arrogant construction. I think, and I see an Oriental influence here also. The excessive decoration seems to have an Oriental source somehow. Anyway. Le Palais idéal, the ideal palace, it is remarkable. I mean, just think, that out of small stones, maybe he also used, I imagine, some concrete, but to build this alone, a single man, for, 33 years is quite remarkable. And you see here the size of a human being. I mean, it's not so small. This is not a toy. It's a big building. Now, the architect with at least 18 years of study would say, nonsense, this is not this is not a building, this is not architecture, this is sculpture. That's what sometimes I hear. I would disagree. It is a building with a maybe mysterious or maybe simplistic function, but it is a building. He was influenced, yes, by Hindu temple. We see here a clear indication in this sense, although the Hindu temple that he shows here is much more simplistic than what he built, and actually the Hindu temple is more complex than what is shown here. But this is indeed, rather naive. A detail of the north front. I mean, look at this. This is not a joke. I mean, and I mean, what architect with at least 18 years of study would do something like this, to place the head of an animal as part of the body of a building, or to incorporate even a human face. And, here is another animal, and it's also the vegetal world. The plants are insinuating themselves quite with insistence in the building. All in all, it's a type of construction that for an educated architect is almost inconceivable. But it is inconceivable because we are divorced from what Sigmund Freud called ID, that is maybe in a way our specific, intensely specific ID, meaning identity, that inner world, that deep world that cannot express itself because we are too educated and in a way too estranged from our inner truth. There is even the influence of a Swiss chalet, again, simplified. Strangely, or maybe not so strangely, the influences are simplified in the way they are externalized, that they are sculpted here, and his building is much more, I mean, look at what is going on just here around this, little alcove where he wrote here, Chalet Suisse. Anyway, but all in all, to have something like this in France, in Europe, it's quite remarkable, and it shows again, in my opinion, the power of the so-called unconscious, the unconscious, that unconscious that we don't listen to, most of the time, in the name of reason, in the name of education, in the name of requirements, in the name of what the so-called client we think he or she wants, and so on. In my opinion, Cheval is provoking us. He's making us, you know, just like Antoni Gaudí in his different way. Antoni Gaudí was an educated architect, but in his case also, we are confronted with anomaly in a way, you know. This is an architecture of anomalies, you know, I mean, anomalies from the point of view of a rationalist, a man, okay, let's say a man, me, educated, and I think that this is an anomaly. I mean, what does it mean to place a bird here on top of this thing? We don't do this thing. We are not even allowed to do this thing even in the drawings. Forget about actually building. But when I look at this building, and it is a building, I cannot deny that I am impressed, and I become emotional. It moves me. And there is so much richness, I couldn't stop, you know, including pictures in this presentation. You know, I said, okay, I'll do 60 pictures, then 65, then 70. I continuously discovered new things. Can we say the same thing about our cubical, rectangular, little or not so little building? I doubt it. I mean, look at this. You know, there is everything here. Is you know, the floral world, the animal world, the architectural world, or the human world, the dream world, you know, and there is also abstraction. It's not only figuration. There are symbols that probably need to be deciphered, or they were already deciphered, but I don't know of. I mean, look at these columns. You know, they are created. They are not copied from the history books. And I don't think this building is just about him, Ferdinand Cheval. It is about the world. It's a meditation in stone, literally in stone, about the world, about life. And I think it is remarkable. De pense, de rien, toucher. I understood he didn't write very, I mean, from a grammatical point of view, because he didn't have enough education, he wrote with mistakes, so to speak. But to me, his building is not a mistake. It shows sensitivity, imagination, and even culture. Look, Adam and Eve there, you know. We don't think about such things in our buildings, you know, at all. Our buildings do not narrate anything. They don't tell any story. This man is trying to tell the story of his own soul, the story of the biblical story. It's a narrative architecture. Our architectures are not narrative. Most of the time are not. You know, people are wondering, you know, they wonder, you know, what's going on here. This is what he wrote, l'auteur du Palais, meaning the author of the Palace, who is probably here. It looks like the postman. Ami de la nature, mais de naissance obscure, ce qui rend souvent la vie dure, je les subis sans murmure. He even wrote poetry, friend of nature, but of an obscure birth, ce qui rend souvent, what often makes the life rough. I accepted it in a way without whispers or without murmur. You know, he was a thinker. He was a poet. He was a complex man. He was not, you know, just an uneducated man with four years of schooling. Anyway, on the other hand, what does it mean naive? You know, I think great works are in a certain way naive. There is a naivety, as Nietzsche said, a great man has some kind of a mixture between innocence or naivete, if you want, and cynicism. I'm afraid that the schools in general try to erase the so-called naivete and only nourish the cynicism of the professional, you know, the so-called professional who knows best, who is efficient, who claims that he deserves the money for his service. But there is cynicism in professionalism in general, I would say, because that naivete, as it was called in the case of Ferdinand Cheval, is actually a sign of purity, you know, the purity of the soul. Look at him here, the architect, on top of, obviously this man, yes, life was dure, was rough, was raw, was difficult. I mean, I am trying to imagine myself, you know, this requires, everything required effort and some resources, and he didn't have. He was a poor man, essentially, you know, a postman. But he was really like that mollusk that you know, the French philosopher, also French, said that lives in order to build. Gaston Bachelard, that's what he said, that this is the difference between the human being and the mollusk. The mollusk lives in order to build its house, while we build our house in order to live in it. It's a difference. This man lived in order to build this ideal palace, just like the mollusk. This is a picture of the actor who plays the postman, the mailman Cheval in this film called Incroyable Histoire du Facteur Cheval from 2018. Now, I don't know if he looks like the postman, but it's irrelevant. That's not what matters. Maybe behind him is written 33, because that was the number of years that the postman worked on his palace. I show a few more pictures and then we'll go to Owen Jones. So it is an astonishing thing, really. And it shows that if you have dedication, if you have imagination, if you have persistence, you can leave something behind you which is not irrelevant to life and to the life of others as well, I would say. Yeah, some people would say this is too busy for me, you know, this is madness, this is nonsense. I don't know. Why is this more nonsense than Versailles? Yes, it's smaller than Versailles. Yes, was not built for a king, but even more so, I think it deserves appreciation. And I mean, look at the size of a human being. It's big. It's big. It's not, you know, giant. It's not immense. But when you think that a single man built this, it is remarkable. I mean, look at these buildings. Are they more relevant than this? Are they, you know, more sophisticated and less naive? In my opinion, these are more naive than this. It's very possible that if we are to express our own unconscious, most of us would kind of build in this way and not white cubes. I don't think our unconscious dreams of white cubes. Ferdinand Cheval, happy birthday to you. He succeeded. He earned his life. He earned his life, and the tourists go there in order to see the example of a man who earned his life. Now, someone else might earn his or her life in a different way. Yes, that's fine. But I think he's an example that a lot is possible if we have ardor, if we believe in what we feel and think, and we act upon what we feel and think, then we can achieve interesting things. Of course, one day we all die, just like Ferdinand Cheval, just like Louis Le Soleil, just like Le Corbusier. One day we all die. But did we earn our lives? This is the question. He earned his life. He was an architect, a sculptor who earned a modest living as a mailman, as a mail person. But he didn't remain conditioned or described by that work alone. He also did this. So the creative impetus existed in him in as much as probably exists in everyone. Unfortunately, most of us, we either choose to forget this, or we blame society and the hardships of life of being unable to be creative. Because, you know, as my parents used to tell me, poetry goes through the stomach. Well, poetry went through the stomach in the case of Ferdinand Cheval also. Yet, he wrote it in stone and even with words, as we just read. And we see here the word chimère, you know, which is not accidentally present here. In a way, all life is a chimère, you know. It's a dream. Life is a dream. It has been said. Strindberg even said space and time do not exist. Who knows? Who knows? But one thing is for sure, an example like Ferdinand Cheval is, I think, worthy of consideration.